Thank you very much, Damien. You should be able to see my screen now, I hope.
Yes.
Perfect. Well, hi all, thanks very much for joining us this morning. As Damien said, my name is Lily. I'm the head of product at Advanced Infrastructure, and joining me as well, we have Christopher Jackson, CEO and technical lead on this project. So first, I'll run through a few slides to give you an overview of what LAEP Plus is, and then we'll move on to a deeper dive into the different functions that LEAP Plus can perform. It should take just under 20 minutes, after which there'll be plenty of time for some questions. So do stick them in the chat while you can. What is LEAP Plus? LEAP Plus, or Local Area Energy Planning Plus, is a collaborative cloud-based design tool. It's aimed at local authorities, energy network operators, and consultancies who are working together to transition local energy systems to net zero. Over MEDApps phase 1 and 2, we conducted over 70 interviews with individuals from local authorities, energy hubs, networks, consultancies, community energy groups, and many more. Several common themes emerged. Firstly, the market is underserved when it comes to delivering strategic high-level plans. Local area energy plans or tools like the Energy Path networks provide an excellent starting point, but their outputs are regional and suggestive. They do not help local authority teams identify which buildings and individual streets are actually suitable for projects. Next, the market is overserved by a huge range of tools and data portals. The typical project team will go through between 8 and 25 data portals and modeling tools just at the feasibility stage. These tools don't easily integrate and data models rarely align, making it hard to consider everything at once when you're making strategic decisions. Third and finally, everyone struggles to work together. Different teams within organizations often don't have visibility of what each other is doing, missing opportunities to collaborate and combine resources. Outside organizational boundaries, the problem is often worse. Energy networks and local authorities in particular use completely different vocabulary and spatial analysis. It's all Greek to me, in the words of one planner we spoke to. While local authorities, finally, local authorities often struggle to get local residents engaged and on board without nice visualizations and tools to do so. In short, the collaboration, clarity, and data access required to transition local energy networks is missing. Today, we're going to give a brief overview and some short demonstrations of 4 use cases that LEAP Plus addresses. First, we're going to look at identifying project opportunities at the building level. Then we'll move on to the add-ons marketplace, where we've built the opportunity for users to purchase and share models and datasets. I'll then hand over to Christopher for a quick deep dive into some of the LEAP Plus models. The first is a carbon calculator used to estimate scope 2 carbon savings of low carbon technology deployments. And finally, an example of one of the LEAP Plus datasets that we're really excited about: building level electricity demand profiles. The LEAP Plus tool is designed to allow analysis and visualization at any resolution. Local authority users can choose to share their plans and needs with other local authorities to facilitate idea sharing and identification of opportunities for co-bidding. These will be available at a national and searchable map, just as you can see here. Or, if they're interested, users can use that national map view to get an overview of what the local area energy planning landscape looks like outside their borders. On the network side, transmission operators can use the map to view the potential impact of plans aggregated at grid supply points, taking into account both upstream and downstream generation and demand. Here you can see that national electricity network, the overhead lines, the grid supply points, gas pipes, metered and unmetered wind, as well as 1 million transmission and distribution connected PV assets, geolocated and modeled by Sheffield Solar. And crucially, local authorities, consultants, and distribution network operators can zoom all the way in to street level and collaborate on plans and data at the resolution of individual buildings and feeders. LEAP Plus interfaces data into a stack of visual layers in planning mode, and allows users to explore these with views such as map view, first person, 2D, and orthographic. Here we can see that users can use various different base maps, including satellite, and overlays of hundreds of data sets. In this case, our planning officer is exploring local building stock for a town. At the moment, you can see buildings grouped by their different uses. Most are residential, but you can also see retail, offices, agriculture, and health. Next up, we can choose to view listed buildings arranged by grade. And here we can see buildings grouped by socio-demographic data about the occupiers. Age, income, family size, mobility patterns are all useful features to know when searching for project opportunities. And finally, we can take a look at building age. These are all examples of the type of criteria that often need to be fulfilled to receive government funding for retrofits and low carbon technology deployments. In this particular use case, a planning officer here is exploring different types of data. They've uploaded their own traffic counter data, which collates together motor, cycles, HGV, and cars to look at traffic intensity in a town. He's also exploring street furniture with a view to looking at where he can site EV charge points. On top of these data layers, he can start to build his own virtual projects. Once those project plans are completed, we're next exploring working with 2DNOs on the possibility of users receiving connection quotes and submitting connection requests directly through the platform, limiting the time spent switching between lots of different data portals, platforms, and forms. Meanwhile, for identifying project opportunities, LAEP Plus allows users to filter data. In this case, our planning officer is exploring the capacity of network supply areas in the UKPN region. Red to green coloring gives a quick, simple indication of the modeled spare capacity of the network. On top of that, you can see our planning officer further applying filters to rule out areas with likely too little spare capacity to deploy heat pumps or other high-consuming technologies. In the tool, users can apply multivariant filters across various different data sets in a form of map algebra that produces new data layers, identifying optimal zones and buildings for specific types of projects. From the projects dashboard, users can keep a track of all the projects they've built, the technology types deployed, the total renewable yield generated, the estimated cost, and the potential carbon savings of all their virtual projects if they were to be deployed. It also provides a different interface to explore their data in charts, graphs, and dashboards. Planning tools are, of course, all very well, but even the best design tool is only as good as the data that's in it. And as everyone in the industry will be really well aware, data access and interoperability is a huge issue. So next up, we've been developing something that we call the Dataset Marketplace. And as part of our solution, we're working with offering different data sets and different models within this integrated marketplace. And here, users can explore premium and free data sets and models. We've scraped together those that are publicly available, those that have been shared by other LAEP Plus users, those that are for sale by third-party suppliers, and some that have been built specifically for this LAEP project by Advanced Infrastructure. As part of the marketplace, users can also upload and store their own private data sets. Those can be kept completely private and secure if they choose, or they can choose to make these data sets available for use and exploration by other LAEP Plus users and organizations to help identify opportunities and share best practice. Next, I'll hand over to Christopher to run you through some example models and data sets we've been developing.
Hey, thank you, Lily. So we're going to look through use case 3. The industry is awash with overlapping energy models, some proprietary and many open source. The ability to host and integrate energy models across platforms is referred to as interoperability and is hugely beneficial to the goals of digitalizing the energy sector. It means that our platform can benefit from the years of development of energy modeling for low carbon technologies. In order to do this, we need to develop data connectors that map our data onto these established tools. One of the first models that we've integrated is an avoided carbon emissions calculator. One of the key requirements of our users is the ability to optimize the cost of a project against the carbon reduction of that project. This is also a requirement for accessing many central government funds for the low carbon energy transition. The tool automatically calculates the carbon emissions offset by a combination of low carbon technologies. In this example, you can see here, we can see the different peaks shaved off by wind, represented in blue, and solar PV represented in yellow. Next slide, please. The ability to take off-the-shelf tools and repurpose them at national scale is a really important functionality. This level of interoperability allows for faster software development and faster user adoption. We do this with national scale energy data sets like the one you see here on the screen now. This is a granular grid emissions factor API, which measures the impact of distributed solar generation of the local on the local carbon intensity of electricity supply. Next slide, please. So moving on to our fourth and our final use case that we'll be exploring today. LAEP Plus will offer a number of these national scale data sets essential for the local area energy planning process. We'll focus on national scale and cost-effective approaches to providing the data needed by each local authority in the UK to site and to procure energy projects. Next slide, please. The most valuable data set in the industry is smart meter data, but attempts to open the data set so that innovators can develop net zero solutions have failed. Governance and data privacy barriers have not been overcome. As part of the LAEP Plus work programme, we're developing a solution to these barriers so that smart meter data can be accessed at the building or the MPAN, meter point administration number level. Advanced Infrastructure is developing a demand profiling service offering building level half-hourly electricity demand forecasting at national scale. Project partners Sheffield Solar are providing anonymization and machine learning expertise, and the Energy Systems Catapult are supporting data governance. Next slide, please. So what does the service do? The service uses novel anonymization techniques to leverage millions of smart meter customer records to build representative profiles of electricity demand for all electricity customers. Demand profiles can be aggregated by any spatial configuration from feeder to electricity to grid supply point. And what is the technical innovation? The service uses anonymization by classification as a core methodology in preserving building level and occupier level resolution while remaining compliant with governance and data privacy regulation. Next slide, please. The service uses leading building stock, social demographic, and business metadata to fit customers to one of thousands of classifications. These classifications are then assigned to half-hourly demand profiles representative of both the building and the occupier. The service is validated against low voltage monitoring data, providing a ground truth baseline for performance measurement. The service provides forecasts for 48 half-hourly periods per day. Users can model interventions such as electric vehicles, heat pumps, or photovoltaics at the building level by updating the building classification. In this way, we can forecast the energy demand of any building as it is upgraded with new low carbon technologies. The service is accessed via a web service interface that you can see on the right, or a programmable API for powerful energy modeling applications. Users can aggregate demand across transformer service areas, low voltage, primary, bulk supply point, and even GSP, or energy supplier customer lists. This is a really powerful data service for the industry, and we hope that it has a significant impact on those who require access to smart meter data. Now handing back over to Lily to wrap up.
As I say, we've been running trials with a number of users over both phase 1 and phase 2. And this has allowed us to get some really good data on what the cost savings and the time savings of LEAP Plus could be if deployed at scale. From our work with councils and consultancies to date, we'd estimate that the average time saving from each project equates to a 90% reduction in the time spent sourcing data for a typical project. This then in turn equates to financial savings of an average of £10,000 per feasibility study. For energy networks, we'd estimate the annual cost saving could be as high as 1% cut from the annual reinforcement costs, equating to several million per distribution network operator. This value is derived from the improved operational performance of networks through better visibility of upcoming future connections to the low voltage network by local authorities using the tool, but also from better data sharing and better visibility on the local authority side that lets them target their deployments to areas that have high spare capacity already and target flexibility deployments to areas that are struggling with constraints. To sum up, LEAP Plus is a collaborative design tool, an integrated marketplace that is intended to make it easier to quickly access the data and the models needed to identify your opportunities for projects, for engagement initiatives, and for plans. It allows you to build hundreds of different projects and turn these either into standalone projects or cohesive energy plans. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you, Lily and Christopher, for this brilliant presentation. So we have a couple of questions already in the chat. The first one is around formats for ingesting data. So what type of formats does your platform support in terms of ingesting data? What can a user upload to the platform?
So from the user's point of view, at the moment, we're supporting CSV and GeoJSON, but we'll also be expanding that to include KMLs, Esri shapefiles, and various others. In terms of our third-party data suppliers who sell data via the platform, that data can come to us in any format, and our backend can convert that into whatever format we need for the tool. But for users, it's mostly CSV and GeoJSON at the moment.
And will your platform support the Common Information Model, or CIM?
Yeah, we were actually discussing that yesterday with the distribution network operator. We think it's vital. CIM is the best way for DNOs to communicate their networks to the industry. They've tried it using CSVs and Excels. They've tried it using shapefiles. It just leads to errors. And we ourselves have spent many a long night trying to piece the two together and would rather never do it again. So yes, we'll be adopting the CIM format, and we'll be able to ingest data from the DNOs and output as well.
Yeah, crucial functionality, I guess. And talking about DNO data, you mentioned that a user can see the spare capacity available in certain areas. And what is your level of access to DNO data at the moment? Do you? Yeah.
So this is a really fun topic, and Fabio, you know just how much fun this is in terms of getting access to the ground truth of the cables and wires. Our access is as much as the DNOs let us have, and it's as accurate as the DNOs can provide. Some of them are closer on that journey to providing the ground truth openly, and some of them are a long way away. We can only go as fast as they provide the data. We can make it a bit easier by controlling access through data sharing agreements, so they can be more confident that it's not being put in the public domain, but it's been put in the domain of useful energy planners in controlled areas. And that's often what we've done. The highest resolution data, i.e. the location of feeders and transformers, we have ingested onto our platform for limited areas under trials. But we are waiting for the DNOs to grant sort of national scale access, and we'll move as fast as they can let us.
And staying on this topic, like, does your platform allow the user to visualize the spare capacity, or allows also for the user to understand what the potential reinforcement cost can be in a certain area, or simply what the for a practitioner, for instance, can a practitioner understand roughly what the connection cost could be for their project through your platform?
Yeah, we think it does. Ultimately, it's up to the DNO to give the firm offer and the costing, but we think there's immense value in providing as much of the ground truth information as possible in the public domain, such that energy planners can make the obvious decisions. So if we can show where there is no capacity and where there is a long distance to a connection, then that allows the customer to make their own decision and not approach the DNO knowing that there would be a very high cost associated with that connection. What we would love to move towards, and we're discussing with a number of DNOs, is a large degree of self-service in DNO applications. And that's massively in the DNO's interest, because I just don't think they have the human resources available to manage the flood of applications coming their way. So any tools that offer a degree of self-service and the ability to self-budget, I think are really valuable.
We're exploring a couple of different models for different DNO regions. Unfortunately, what DNOs are able to share is slightly different between themselves. But the typical approach we're taking is to try to provide a ballpark cost of what a connection would be based on the information we have about the substation. And then in time, either they submit it to the DNO through the DNO's portal, or in as many cases as possible, we're trying to make it possible for them to submit it through our platform and then receive a confirmed quote back from the DNO, again, through the same platform.
All right, impressive. And we have a question from team, that is, you have stated that there is an oversupply of mapping tools to the market. How do you think your tool differentiate from other products on the market, such as those that have been presented yesterday that are part of this competition?
I'm happy to have a stab at that. I think we're specifically referring to many of the open data portals in which data is provided, let's say, on DNO networks or demands, for which you can't overlay the other data sets required to cite a low carbon technology. So the problem is that many of these portals just have one part of the user journey. They don't have the complete data sets required to solve the low carbon technology citing problem. So the way we've designed our platform is that you can overlay any data sets that you have and aggregate any data sets you have across the entire user journey of citing that technology. So that's where our approach differs compared to sort of single data set open portals. There's a classic example is that in citing EV charger, in our user research, we've seen the citing engineers use 5 or so different data sources and different data sites, from Google Maps to DNO plans to Department of Transport data and Street View, all to try and solve one problem, but skipping between so many tools. I think our approach tries to put it all in one place, cleans it, makes it quickly available, and just removes 90% of the data sourcing effort that is simply replicated day in and day out in the energy transition. So that's where we think we add value and differentiate ourselves.
And just to add to what Crystal was saying, that's the problem with data sets, but we also see a very common problem with models, with their with a lot of models being single technology and not integrating with one another and not integrating with other data sets. So if you take Thermos, for example, it's an excellent tool, and we have nothing against any of these modeling tools. It's the fact that they don't integrate well with one another. So Thermos doesn't integrate, for example, with network capacity and doesn't take into account of what impact this might have on the network and what the connection cost might be, which is obviously a huge factor in deciding whether or not you're actually going to site heat pumps, a heat network, or something else. So again, our approach is to try to make it possible to bring all those models together in one platform so you can compare all your technologies in one place.
Great. And so speaking about integrating different data layers and models, do you think that your platform will be extended also to other type of infrastructures such as water or telecommunications?
We had the water question yesterday from interestingly another utility provider. It already does include water in the sense that one of the key data sets required is what's the underground asset register and locations of other utilities, which is something you would otherwise have to go and look up separately. So we already include the location of water pipes. What would be interesting is to include models and energy models and technologies which reduce, let's say, the carbon intensity of water pumping. But that's something that our carbon emissions calculator tool could similarly do. So part of that journey, including water, is already done. Although telecommunications we haven't approached yet, other than where the underground assets are.
Okay. And speaking about models, I had a question on your building level demand profiling service. And I was just wondering how big of a data set is required for training such an algorithm? And yeah, what will you need for actually, what are you using or what do you need for training this type of algorithm and to create synthetic profiles?
So the ideal size would be 4 terabytes of data, which would be more or less the half-hourly energy demand of every. And but we think with around 300,000 customers, one can get a representative sample of the rest of the 30 million customers. But our goal is essentially to have comprehensive access to every customer to be able to create the most accurate profiles. I mean, it's really important when you're looking at building this model for new technologies which have very small deployments to date. So with heat pumps, for example, if you want to do a classification methodology approach, you need a reasonable sample size of heat pump customers, and there are very few to date. So that's why it's really important to get nationwide access to smart meter data in order to capture those early adopter populations. And that's something that that we're spending a lot of time doing. We're finding technical workarounds to the current governance and GDPR restrictions because, unfortunately, the regulation isn't moving as fast as it needs to for the work that we're doing.
And once you've got that smart meter data, it's then a case of training it against the occupier data for those houses and also the building archetypes, so EPC rating, wall type, roof type, etc.
Great. Yeah, I can recognize the importance of having access to this data. And still speaking about your models, are you planning to have any of your models as an open source or any aspect of your platform as open source?
Yes, we think it's really important to have the methodologies as open source and a lot of the data is open source so it can be used and interrogated and people can believe it and have confidence in it. One of the major problems with DFES data is that the data is open source, i.e. you can use it, you can download it, but the methodology is proprietary. And that means that no one can interrogate, no one can challenge a DFES scenario because the underlying methodology isn't published. So when people talk about open data in the energy sector, they really need to understand what open data actually means and what needs to be open. Because with respect to many data sets, if you don't publish the methodologies, it's not going to be widely adopted, and it's not going to be able to be used and challenged and improved upon.
Right. Well, we are unfortunately we need to stop now. Unfortunately, there are still some questions that we haven't answered in the chat. So
if I could just shout out to one question from WPD around their CIM data. We haven't specifically looked at their data, but the areas I was speaking to is when CIM data or other asset data from the DNOs is converted into CSVs and other shapefile formats. We always see errors. We see transformers in the middle of the North Sea. We see transformers outside of DNO license areas. So I think it's more in the data transform that the errors appear, notwithstanding the original errors in the source data.
Thank you, Christopher, for clarifying that. And as I said, there are several questions that haven't been addressed in the chat. So please, Christopher, Lily, if you could reply to those questions in the chat, that would be great. And we now have a break of roughly 10 minutes, and we will come back at 10:50 with Durban Tide. Thank you, Christopher and Lily, again. It was a brilliant presentation and brilliant discussion.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.